This is your time to shine. Tell us about you, your story, your background. Tell us about Maurice.
My goodness me. Well, I mean, being 80 years old in itself is, as I said already, an achievement. But it's how I've got here is just totally unbelievable. I mean, it's a remarkable story, and it can't be condensed into a short period of time like this. But I mean, let's just go for a few of the highlights. I mean, I spent the first part of my my working life as a teacher. And because I went to a fabulous college in Durham, the College of the Venerable Bede, which became amalgamated with the girls' college next door, Hills, and became Hills and Bede, and now it's just been assumed up into the university departments of Durham University. But at that time, it was a teachers' training college, so I left there with a teachers' training certificate. So what did I do? I went into teaching. But I had a good career in teaching. I was successful and did lots of wonderful things. But I was outed, public outed in 2000 and no, not 2000. No, it was the 80s. And someone said to me, "Look, Maurice, you can fight for your career." I mean, at that time, uh, even though we'd gone past the 1967 Act, which allowed consenting male adults over the age of 21 to have sex in private. That was only a partial decriminalisation, and it certainly had no. It has the opposite effect on the police and other parts of society, where it just increased the discrimination and all kinds of things which made life not pleasant at all for LGBT people. So the only way to deal with that in my career in teaching was to be straight or appear straight, and I do have some acting skills, and so that wasn't a problem for me. But I was perhaps too convincing. I don't know, but I got myself. It all came to a head as I said, in 1980. One
And was
or
this by
two.
yourself, or you? Because you said you were outed. Was that by someone else, or did you come out yourself?
No, no, I've always been out to myself. Yeah, I was born gay. No, that's not an issue. It's dealing with society that's the
Yeah,
problem.
agreed.
And so that's why I'm glad that you're doing something, because you're part of society, and the society for particularly for older people, which needs to be inclusive and make people feel safe where they are. But for me at that time, no, but basically I fell into a police trap, an entrapment, and so it ended up in a court case. And my lawyer said that we could fight this when it came to my job and retaining it. Said no, you've got a perfect case and this was now in the 80s, so it's 20 years on from the 67 Act. But still, there was still a lot of discrimination and harassment, and so I said, well, no, I really. Well, good friend went to me, said, "Look, Maurice," he said, "you just treat this as an opportunity that you otherwise wouldn't have had. What do you really want to do?" I said, "Well, I've always wanted to work in theatre." So she said, "Well, go for it." And so I went for it, and 200 rejections later, she said, "Have you written to Peter Cheeseman?" This is in Stoke-on-Trent, who was the artistic director of the Victoria Theatre,
Mhm.
which was. And I said, "Well, no." I said, "Because he's homophobic." And I said, "Have you written?" I said, "Write to him. Write to him." So I wrote, and I got an interview, and I got a job. So
How amazing.
Peter Cheeseman gave me my first my provisional equity card, and but within a year it was made into a full equity card, and I loved it. It was like coming home. because I was accepted there for what I was. That my sexuality was not an issue. Could I do the job? Well, initially I didn't make a very good job of things at all, because work, doing amateur dramatics is one thing, but doing professional theatre is something quite different, and timing is all. And I made several mistakes. So one of the actors said, "Maurice," she said, "I think you've got it in for me." I said, "No, I'm really trying." But I got better, and in the end, I rose rapidly in the ranks, and I was made DSM in charge of sound, and then I did lighting as well. And when the theatre closed down, in preparation for the new building up the road in Stonyfield, I went to Derby Playhouse, where I took a step down from being stage manager to being deputy stage manager, so I could learn the job of running a show. Because at the theatre in Stoke, it was theatre in the round, and everybody was self-queuing, so there's no need to have somebody on the book running the show. So that was a skill I needed, and I loved being on the book, and I loved working with directors and designers and the company with the actors. And so yeah, I loved doing that, and I went from Derby to Birmingham Playhouse, then to the West End, and I did touring opera and touring theatre, and I really loved it. I mean, I ended up as company manager at Theatre Clwyd in Wales, and that was wonderful. I met some terrific people.
I
Uh,
just love that that's come from a certain situation of feeling so discriminated against and highlighted, and and then obviously now you're happy and you're doing things
Absolutely.
that you've always wanted to do. That's incredible. I love that.
Except, of course, 2 years into less than 2 years into the job, in 1984, I went to America with my then boyfriend,
Hmm.
and we picked up a sexually transmitted disease there. And it didn't clear up properly, even after we'd had penicillin shots in Atlanta, Georgia. And when we came home, we both went to the local GUM clinic, which was just around the corner at that time. And unbeknown to either of us, we were both tested for this new mysterious disease that was affecting gay men. We'd come back from America, got a sexually transmitted disease, obviously, test them for it. And no counseling, nothing of anything like that. His result came back negative. Now mine was positive. Now the only person that I had unprotected sex with whilst I was there was him. It was my partner. And of course, you cannot catch HIV from somebody who doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And now we know that people on effective treatment cannot pass it on either. U equals U. If you're undetectable, if you have an undetectable viral load, you cannot pass on the virus. It's not a low rate of transmission. It is zero. You cannot do it. So that's encouraging, And so I think folk ought to know that. So
Yeah.
if people coming to a care home, or people going into people's homes with people living with HIV, they have nothing to fear.
How did you feel when you found that out, when you got that result?
I felt utterly devastated.
And how old were you,
Yeah.
sorry?
Also, at that time, this is the 80s we're talking about. This is the era of "It's a Sin." If you've seen the fabulous series made by Russell T Davies, and that did actually represent. I mean, I could identify with what was going on there, and I lost lots of friends from AIDS, and I thought I was going to go the same way. But I was one of those people who was fortunate. I was asymptomatic. I didn't have any signs of the disease until 10 years later. And so I actually had a fabulous career in professional theatre. But yeah, 10 years later, it really struck. That was when I was in a really bad state. I became seriously ill, was hospitalized and given an AIDS diagnosis and 6 months to live.
How
And
old were you there, if you don't mind me asking?
I was then, I started my career when I was in 42, so I'd be 50, 52 at that time, because it was, or it'd be 53, because it was just after my birthday, which was in September. So
Okay.
yes, that's how old I was at the time. So I wasn't the age of the people in the cast of the characters of It's a Sin. I was a decade or so older. So that's but nonetheless, I
Yeah.
totally identified with what was going on then.
Being given 6 months to live, that must have had a huge impact. And obviously, I'm extremely happy that that wasn't the case and that you're here to tell your
Yep.
tale and showcase you can actually have a long and very happy life.
Absolutely.
Um,
But yes, again, I was fortunate. I
mm,
don't know, maybe because it's of things in the past. I don't know what the reason was, but I was determined to keep going. And my age-defining illness was HIV encephalopathy, which is affects the brain. It's a form of dementia. But and as you know, dementia is a progressive disease, except in one or two cases, one or two types of infection of becoming of having dementia, which can be reversed. One is alcohol related, the other
yeah.
one is drug related, and the third one is HIV. And but of course, there was no effective treatment really at that time. All the treatment that was available, I knew was killing. AZT, when it first came on available, was killing as many people as it was saving, and so that was not an option for me. So I refused it. So yeah, yes, it's been like that. I'm proactive about my health, and so I refused things which I thought were not going to help. Unfortunately, well, I was around when the new miracle drugs came out, the protease inhibitors in 1996, and yeah, that was it was fortunate. But as I said, I benefited from them, but also suffered from them because they were really quite toxic. And the ones that I was given, which is ritonavir, is not prescribed now as a therapeutic dosage. It is so powerful. It is used to boost other drugs. It's
Wow.
so, but at the time, that's the way it was. But the thing is, you see, that gradually my immune system recovered, and after a year, I realized that I was still here. I just fighting, and I went back to college because I've got to keep my brain functioning. And I enrolled for all the courses that were going. I did too much in the end. I mean, I was also um, by the end of the year, when I hadn't died, I thought, well, I need to do something for the people that have been helping me, the Staffordshire buddies and my buddy. And so I thought, well, yeah, I can use the talents I've got, because apart from being from the acting skills, I mean, had a lifelong career. When I was in teaching, it was a teacher of music and drama.
Yeah.
And music has always been a very important part of my life. And so I thought, well, we'll put on a classical concert for World AIDS Day and raise some money and awareness, and see how that goes. There was a fabulous choir of which I was a member at the time, and I spoke to May Wally, the director, and she said, yeah, yeah, we'll do it. And so the first one was a huge success. It overran in time. That's something it took me a long time to get timing right, as I mentioned. And but it was a success. I was just amazed at the generosity of spirit of local people. This is adults and children who are willing to give up their time and talents to come and put on a really first class show. So
I've found that you don't know who will help until you ask the question.
that's right. That's
And
right.
it doesn't matter what it's for as well. Like with this, it's great that everybody came together for such an important item as well. Generally, just to educate and showcase
Yeah.
that one, it's not a taboo subject. It's fine to talk about. It happens. People live with it,
Mm.
but also to raise money for the work that does need to be done to help those who do have those diseases or have lost family and friends from those diseases as well. I'm just curious on this. Um, with obviously you accepting the fact that you've got this disease and you having the most amazing outlook on life, I have to say, and the inner fight that you had to go, this is not the end for me. I'm going to keep going. There's so much I want to do. And then obviously hurdling at 100 miles an hour afterwards and taking on too much, as you've just said. How has it developed over, let's say, the last 10 years for you in your recent life? Does it have an impact day to day for you? Or is it something that is just there and you know it's there?
Well, no, it's the least of my problems because when you get older, you take medication, and
Yeah.
it's just for all sorts of things. And so I've taken my HIV medication is not an issue at all, and that's all I do. It's just part of my everyday routine, and it's really not an issue for me. But it is for other people, and other people are not so fortunate as me. So that's why I'm a member of the Terence Higgins Trust for long-term survivors. I've been a member of the National Long-Term Survivors Group, now renamed High Vitality, and it sounds like a sports drink or something, but in actual fact, when you see it written down, it's HIV vitality, and it makes sense. But so being part of that, that's peer support, and I
Yeah.
strongly advocate peer support, not just for people with HIV, but for any kind of area of life, whether it's with a disease or whether it's not, whether it's just
Yeah.
just socially. And the other thing which I perhaps just ought to just mention is that after these World AIDS Day concerts I mentioned, they just got bigger and bigger every year. And in 1999, we did concerts in Stoke Minster, and then in Lichfield Cathedral, and we got celebrities to write in and for the program and things, like Cheryl Campbell and what's he called? Ian McKellen. Oh, Sir Ian McKellen. People like that. Oh, it's wonderful. But the thing is, I was doing all this, the background work for the program, for the tickets, for the sales, for the getting the program together. I was also participating as a member of the choir, and I was fronting it. I was the compere, and I just burnt myself out. And as a result of that, I developed clinical depression.
Oh no.
So
From
that,
such a happy,
yeah,
encouraging, you
yeah.
know,
And look, digging yourself out of a mental illness like depression is no easy job, and it took years. But the thing was that helped me most was, well, two things. One was one-to-one consultations with a counsellor here with Mind in Stoke-on-Trent, but also with the headquarters of Mind in London, where I was assigned an officer. And she said, Maurice, I think you benefit from taking part in this, the Millennium, um, real lives, real people. And I go for an award, which will provide you with the funds you need for personal development, but also to complete a project of community benefit. And the project of community benefit that I went for was a website on interactive website on LGB, without the T at that time, mental health issues. And I did the project on time and on budget, which was great. And that in itself, meant that I was improving all the time. But also it showed me that going back to education at a higher level was really beneficial. And the only place that could offer the courses I needed to complete the award was the Open University. So that was my introduction to the Open University. So I thought,
wow.
I'm going to become an undergraduate. So that's what I did. And so it's with that my confidence was rebuilt, because when you start getting A's for your essays, and well, first of all, you learn how to write an essay properly. That is,
That's a
you'd think you'd,
talent in
you'd,
itself.
you'd think that I would have been able to do. No. And but my tutor was absolutely brilliant. He said, Maurice, you good. This is good because what you've not done right is this, and you put it right. And when it sort of built up, and you're consistently getting good marks, you've got to say, well, yeah, I can't be bad. All these derogatory things which people have said about me, no, they don't tally with with the reality of getting A's. And so at the end of that particular project, uh, one of the courses was the introduction to the humanities, which covered 8 disciplines. Brilliant. And they got a letter from the Open University saying, we don't grade this course, but if we did, you'd have got distinction. So I thought, oh, that's great. But the other course, to give me all the technical side, your computer and the net, it was graded. And I did get a distinction. So I got a one on that.
Fantastic.
That was
How did
brilliant.
you, in terms of going to university, in terms of, you've already told us about how you were outed and how you obviously very confident in who you were, which I always love to hear from anyone of any background. But when you were at the universities and doing those courses and obviously doing all that hard work, did you also have to deal with discrimination for being a gay man or for HIV positive? Were you open about that there too?
I was open where it came up.
Yes,
And the thing is, of course, the Open University has a policy of anti-discrimination policy, and
fantastic.
so I knew that I had backup, and
Yeah,
they knew about my HIV status. And so when I went on summer schools, this was after I became an undergraduate. When I went on summer schools, they offered support for me, and I thought, well, that's really really nice, but I don't need it. I really don't need
it's
it.
nice to have it there
But
though, just in
nice to
case.
have it there, and it's nice to know that they're thinking about you. Yes,
Yeah,
and you meet people en route who are more out or less out than you are, and this is that's confidence building too. So no, my
exactly.
experience with the Open University was brilliant. My first degree I got in 2006. It was a humanities degree, and but I realised that I didn't manage, even though I got some really good marks on the way to the degree. Finally, I didn't have enough good marks in both the exam and my coursework to get a first, but I got an upper second. I got a good upper second, so that's. And I realised that the work that I'd been on languages on Spanish, but it was really doing me an awful lot of good.
Yeah.
It helped me with my ability to articulate and communicate. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to carry on with this. I thought, well, I'll just go for a language certificate. And my best mate Scott said, "No, Maurice, you want to carry on." So I did a second degree, another honours
Of
degree.
course you did.
Of course you did. I did it in linguistics, in modern language studies, and I just loved it. And so, but you can't use the same language that if you've used a language in a previous degree. So
Yeah.
it had to be two fresh languages. So it's French and German. And German, I still find very very hard.
Oh, bless. Well, in with different types of experiences that you've just mentioned, the university one, the fact that you've just said that you had support when you went there, and that even though you didn't need it, it was available to you. Um, did you have that early on? Because you've already said that obviously you had to act straight in the schools that you taught
Yeah.
at and all of that. But how was it in terms of outside that environment, maybe with friends and family? Did you get support then, or was it
Oh,
only
right.
when you got to
Yeah,
university?
yeah, yes. Well, when I was first diagnosed, I thought, well, who do I tell? And I thought, well, I'm not going to tell anybody because the disease will speak for itself.
Yeah.
It'll come out. Everybody will see. This. I just had images of this Belson-like figures, a skeleton like people, and I will become like that very quickly. With sores and all the rest of it. And but that didn't happen. But so I told my best friends, the people that needed to know,
Yeah.
including my brother and my sister, and but I didn't tell my mum because she was getting on by that time, and I felt she'd had enough issues to cope with, so I didn't tell her. But of course, when I got the AIDS diagnosis and I was in hospital, the lot descended on into the ward, and my mother said, "I knew there was something you wasn't telling me."
How did she
and
react?
and oh no, they were so supportive. That's the thing.
That's
Yes,
really
I
good
knew
to
that I could
hear.
rely upon them, and yeah, yes, yes, they were gunning for me, and anything that I did. My mum was the best supporter for the World AIDS Day concerts, honestly, by far and away. And so it was nice because I was then able to. I was then well enough to be able to care for her at the end of her
Yeah.
life. And she lived to 90. Mind you, she would have loved to have been 100. She was looking forward to be 100, but circumstances determined otherwise.
What
And
was she like with you when you were younger, in terms of being openly gay? So not just on the HIV positive, but when you finally knew yourself that, okay, I'm gay, how did you express that to your mother, and what was she
oh,
like?
well, I didn't express it directly. A mother found these things out as she went along. But I get reckon she always knew because I was when it came to when I was at secondary school, I said, I wish I had a proper friend. Oh, she said, you want a girlfriend? No, I don't want a girlfriend. I want a. So I made it perfectly clear and I remember when if finally we did actually say the words, that I'm gay, and she said, she blamed herself. Oh, I said, mother, why is that? And she said, well, I used to protect you. Protect me from whom? From the rough boys. Oh, I said, and who were the rough boys? She named them. I'd had sex with all of them on multiple occasions. So I said, I said, mother, no, no.
You know, they
I didn't
they're the
explain why,
same.
but I said quite definitely, no, not your fault.
The reason I ask is because I'm interested in different years versus the discrimination received, if that makes sense. So, for instance, as you know, I'm an openly gay woman as well, but I haven't received discrimination in terms of every day or from friends and family. I've had it odd bits here and there, walking down the street or maybe in a pub, maybe even just a message on social media. But I'm just interested to know around the time where you were comfortable with who you with. I mean, it sounds like you've been comfortable from the second you were born, which I love. Um, was there any type of discrimination that did throw you? And if so, how did you deal with it? Or if it didn't throw you, how did you deal with it? If you're walking down the street and somebody said something, did that even happen?
Well, it's odd because I remember when I went to the secondary school and one of the lads came up who'd previously been at the primary school with me. He said, Maurice, I hope you realise that I won't be able to look out for you like I did in the primary school. I thought I didn't even know he was looking out for me. That's one incident. At the secondary school, no, it was ideal. I mean, I cannot tell you. It was. Uh, well, when I say we had sex education lesson, but they were voluntary, of course, because that wasn't on the curriculum at all, or anything like that. And it was done by the music teacher. And he said, well, one of the things he said, which really stuck in my mind, he said, well, yeah, I expect you'd be experimenting sexually with each other. He said, I'm sure your parents would rather you experiment with each other than with girls and getting them pregnant. And I thought, that's enlightened. Or is that an encouragement? So anyway, I mean, yes, I was very popular in the secondary school, and no, it was a great time. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. But when I went to college, of course, I got to go back in the closet again because it was not done to be, and so it was. You did things quietly. I went to New. I was at Durham. But when I went to Newcastle on the weekends, let my hair down there, and but the thing is, when I did parties at college for people for my birthday or whatever it was, and I've invited people over, and they said, I didn't realise it was going to be a gay party. It's fine. Now, yeah. Now, another instance when I was when some yobs were driving past in a car and they rolled down the window and shouted out, "Hey, it's rough buff!" Now, I was dressed in leather at the time. I thought, now that's supposed to be an insult, but it's really quite a compliment.
So you're changing it up.
Yeah, yeah. And there was another one, but occasion, but I just slipped my memory now. But yeah,
Okay, well,
yeah.
if one thing I've always wanted to know, because I always have a thought about it, and it's always come up in terms of if people do therapy, CBT, all of that, it's always what would you say to your younger self? So to your younger self, it sounds like you'd say carry on with the way you did it, because everything, you've got such a great outlook.
Absolutely. Carry.
But
The life has got lots in store for you.
what would you say to that if we put you in a room and we sat down a younger person who's just come out, that faced a little bit of discrimination from the incredible journey that you've been on and the paths that you've taken, what would you say to them to help encourage them, or to, just anything? What would you say to them about how they're feeling? They're obviously feeling quite, held back and things.
That what they're feeling is okay, that they're not
Mm.
alone, and that it gets better.
Yeah.
It
I
gets
think that's the main thing. People don't realize that it is okay to be who they are. There's still
yeah,
stigma around that, whether that's with a disease or openly gay or
yeah,
religion, anything. There's so
yeah.
much stigma around how society needs to see us all. And I said this to Sam, who we spoke to previously on the other meeting. After we spoke for the first time, I just said, I love that you're just you. You're full of character, you're bubbly, you're energetic. And when you said you were 80, I did not believe you, because so many people assume that an 80-year-old is just going to be sat reading a book or reading the TV and not doing too much. And here you are with this incredible journey, but also you're still so busy now. Like, you've got a group that you help support, that you sent a wonderful link on, that I do want to discuss in a minute. But you also play the organ at church, which I also think is another thing we definitely need to talk about, because so many people, including myself, have faith but are reluctant to attend churches because of their sexuality. So, can you tell me a bit about your church and how you got into it and how you're seen there?
Yeah, well, I was poached.
That's the best way to be.
I was headhunted, but because my previous church, I was the organizer for 25 years,
Mm,
and yes, yes. Now there's an instance of internal discrimination, if you like, or internal stigma, because I remember Father Brian. It was one of these World Day events that I was talking about,
mm,
and I said, "Can I just could you please mention it to the congregation?" Oh, he said, "You do it, you do it." So I went down to the front and I said, "We're doing this for this, and it's for people living with HIV like myself." And he I nearly had a heart attack, because he knew that were the homophobic members in the congregation, and people who, if they knew that they were HIV positive, that someone was HIV positive, they'd throw them out the door, and this and that. And so he was expecting a backlash, and it was the opposite. They're totally the opposite, and people were so supportive. And so that was really good. And
When was that? When was that talk that you delivered?
oh well, I mean, we're going back to the 90s now, because that was
Okay.
when I did them. That was when those concerts were taking place. And people have. I've always, since then, I've always been completely open and done
Yeah.
talks to the Mothers Union, not only there but in other mother unions as well. And so yeah, they've always been appreciative and supportive, and you, every time that you come out, and say things, it makes it empower. Well, for me, it's empowering. I found that it's an opportunity to grow, and yeah.
And
So,
from those talks, has anybody come to you and said, I'm so glad that you've delivered this, because actually I'm this person and I'm, because we've had it in orbit where when we've really discussed just the pride group in itself, we've had colleagues come forward completely
yeah.
confidentially and say, I need to tell you that this is who I am. I feel it's the only safe place to do so. But from this, it's generated them to have the confidence to do a talk, to come out and be open to who they are. And I have a great belief that no, we don't need to come out.
Yeah.
We don't need to be that. We don't have people who are, straight, that have a big coming out talk and all that. So it's really up to the individual on how they wish to share their sexuality. But have you had anyone from the church that you've delivered a talk at come up to you and say, I've never told anyone this, or, thank you so much because this is who I am?
Mm.
You
Yes.
have.
Well, the most memorable was when I was in South Africa.
Okay.
Well, this was after 25 years of living with HIV, and that year I wanted to do something special. From 2004, when that was 20 years. That was when I first did my first major adventure, and that was to New Zealand, and it was magical. And I fell in love with the country, went back every year for the following 5 years, learning more and more, exploring it more and more. But in 2009, not only did I go to New Zealand, but I thought, well, no, I ought to do something special. So I volunteered to work for a charity that was looking after AIDS orphans and vulnerable children, giving daycare for them, and also giving home-based care for people living with HIV. And so, and I spoke out as an openly gay man living with HIV, and it helped somebody because they said, "Oh, so and so wants to speak to you." I said, "Well, okay, can I do it tomorrow?" No, she's got to go back to so and so. She'd like to see you. Can she meet you in the prayer garden? So I went to the prayer garden. She said, Maurice, she said, "Thank you ever so much." She said, I'm HIV positive too, and I've never been able to share it with anybody,
Wow.
and that's it's made a difference. So that was yeah. The downside was that other people said that the organisers said we've never had an openly gay volunteer before, and that is a problem for us.
It's
Oh,
a problem.
yes, we have a problem with that. And I said, "Oh, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to go home?" "Oh, no, no, oh, no, no, no." I said, "Well, fine." I said, well, what? "Well, we'll have to pray." "Okay," I said, "you pray and I'll stay." And
Okay.
that's what I did. And I got on with family with everybody, even yeah, everybody pretty well.
It
And so,
makes you think with a comment like that of what was the problem?
yeah,
Because you're there doing
yeah,
such good work,
yeah.
and helping so many people that you didn't have to do that. You've traveled so far to do it. And their problem was your sexuality that had nothing to do with anything there, which it always makes me laugh with that. And it doesn't, well, it's not just making me laugh, it really makes me think what goes on in people's heads, because there was this beautiful advert that I'll have to try and get a link for as well to show you, but it's of two skeletons kissing,
Mhm. Yes.
and everybody's seeing it. And then when the skeletons reveal themselves, so it's obviously an X-ray machine, two
Mm.
people come around, it's actually two women. And the reaction is very different
Yeah.
from just seeing the skeletons. And it makes you think, but what is the difference? It's just sexuality that has nothing to do with anyone else there at all. It's not harming anyone. So it's very interesting that you said they said that, because it's something that to me is, it's flabbergasting. How can sexuality be a problem when it doesn't actually have an impact on
Mm.
anyone else?
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
if with someone who's, let's say, just been given a diagnosis of HIV today, what would be your message to them? Just linking back to that, because obviously you've just said about this woman sitting with you in a prayer garden, which I think is the most beautiful story, of admitting it. But what if
Yeah.
someone in today's generation, that it's still not spoken about enough, which we have to agree on, but if they've just found out today, what would be your message to them in order to get them through?
Just to say, you're not alone, and that these days you couldn't if you had to catch HIV, you couldn't have caught it at a better time,
Yeah.
because the drugs that are available now are so much more effective than they ever were. And if once you're on effective treatment and your viral load is down, you cannot pass the disease on. And funnily enough, you see, this is what happens with getting smartphones and joining up with TikTok and Instagram and things like this. You get people messaging you, and this person said that he'd just been recently diagnosed in the last fortnight, and I just gave him the support. I said, look, you're going to be fine once you're on treatment. He said he was on treatment. I said, well, if you're undetectable, you can't pass on the disease. And I thought, well, but all this was in Spanish, because he was
Wow.
somebody from Originally from Panama. I was then living in Chile or Peru, one or the other, and I thought, well, I can't give any more. I'd like to give him more support, but I need to revert to English. So I wrote in. I said, "Do you speak English?" He said, "No, why?"
Did he write back no why in English?
No, no,
Oh, right,
no,
okay.
no, no, no,
I
no,
was
no,
going to
no,
say, because that
no.
would have been quite
This
funny if he
this is
did write back.
all texting in
Wow.
Spanish. And I said, well, it's English. That's been my first language, it would. I said it wasn't important because we, but the reason that I was doing it is because it was my first language and it's easier to speak in there. And he said, "Oh, that's fine." But he just thanked me for being so understanding
Yeah.
and supportive, and so I sent him on his way. So that was lovely.
Oh, yeah, no, I generally thought when you said you couldn't understand, like obviously he was all writing in Spanish and everything, and then he wrote back no why. I just imagined full Spanish and then the words no and
No, no,
why. So
no, 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 no
full
importa. Okay.
Spanish.
Por qué?
Yeah.
And I said, well, and
How
then
great that he could turn to you though. You know, that social media does have those positives
indeed,
because it,
indeed, yes. Well, he wanted to make sure that he was talking to somebody who was that was HIV positive,
yeah.
and then he revealed that he'd been diagnosed about a fortnight ago,
Wow.
and that's when I just responded and said, you're going to be fine, and you'll live a long life. I said, I'm 80, so and things weren't that good when I was diagnosed. In fact, there was no treatment or anything, and yeah, I mean, in text, well, it's a challenge for a start off. I mean, it's a challenge to write an essay, an academic essay in Spanish. It's a challenge to do a presentation, an oral presentation in Spanish, but it's also a challenge to reduce it into text where you've got to say something in a very few words, and so
Yeah,
that.
limited characters.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so glad he had that, that he was able to message you and find you and be able to
Yeah.
have that discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even just the support of one person makes a huge difference
It does. It
to
does.
everyone. Which
Yeah.
I want to loop onto actually is your group that
Yep.
you've got, the website
Yep.
link. I'm not going to introduce anything because I do just want you to tell us where it came from, how it came about, what the purpose is, and how it's been, for the through even through the pandemic, how has it had an impact, and just tell us all about it because I think it's
Well,
amazing.
it's like the story of Music Ed. Oh, I didn't tell you that I started off the World AIDS Day concerts via a charity established
Right.
well is trying to organise concerts through the board of a charity is like
Not easy.
trying to run through setting concrete. It is not. It didn't work. So I set up a small group called Music Aid, and they ran it from then on. And Music Aid, as I said, was like Topsy. It just grew and grew until we did those big concerts in Lichfield Cathedral and Stoke Minster. And a similar thing happened with the LGBT Elder Peoples Group. Um, it started off with a conference on older LGBT issues, and I organised the concert and I chaired it,
Yeah.
and I had people as keynote speakers, and then workshops afterwards and so on. But the intention of setting it up was to form a group. And so the following month, this was in November, and the following month we had the first meeting at the Leopard Inn in Burslem, which sadly last week was burnt down. It's just a very sad, an awful lot of history attached to the Leopard Inn in Burslem. It's where Josiah Wedgwood met up with Brindley, and they discussed the Trent and Mersey Canal, and that's how that came about. Lots of people, famous people have been. It's a tragedy that it's gone, but there we are. But that's where we had our first meeting. It was a bitterly cold winter's afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and we had mulled wine and what was it? Yeah, mulled wine and mince pies, and some people didn't like mince pies or mulled wine either. But it didn't matter. That was when it started, and just about five. There were just five of us there, and two people there from crew, I think, said, Maurice, whatever this group is going to do, it's got to combat loneliness and isolation. And he told me a sad story of his partner, and who was much older than him. And he said the other thing is that you shouldn't discriminate on age, because an older person can have a much younger partner, which was the situation which he was in, where his older partner, committed suicide, and the police didn't believe that it was a loving relationship. They thought that he was suspicious, that he was treated almost as the perpetrator, and it was awful, absolutely awful. And so that has been the guiding principle. It's still our mission statement, combating isolation and loneliness amongst older LGBT people. And I mean, it just grew from there. It was under the auspices of the was it the Rainbow Network or the LGBT Forum? I forget which. There've been so many that have come and gone locally, but we've lasted. And so in 2019, 10 years afterwards, we became a charity, because we'd had funds from lottery funds, which went over the limit for which you had to become a charity. And so we signed up and became a charity. And it's great how folk have come to be on the board. I mean, there was a time when I thought, oh, this is getting in a difficult situation. But I know other charities where they really struggle to get a board. But not only has our board increased in number, but it's also increased in diversity. We've got, see, it's not as diverse as I'd like it to be, but it has become more so. And also, people are prepared to volunteer and do things. And so it's during the lockdown, during the crisis of the pandemic, we applied for a local grant just to keep us going, which we got without any trouble. But then we applied for a bigger one to do the sort of thing we'd done in the past, which we found worked. The best things to do for combating isolation and loneliness is social interaction. And social interaction can just be sort of like a drop-in situation, which is not what our meetings are, but also when you're doing creative activities, because when people are involved in that, they become more open to share things, and to to give and accept help from other people. And so we found that works brilliantly. So that's what we did in the lockdown. We secured funding from the Specials Fund, which was set up by the lottery and the government together, to do, well, we actually did 4 craft projects and 4 performing arts projects. And they're very different, but the thing is that it allowed people to have something to do with the craft, something to do over the between meetings, and get them involved. But also when they're together, that people were sharing stuff, even on Zoom, because they were doing things and chatting to each other, as far as that is possible on Zoom. It's very much better when it's face to face. But yeah, I
What
mean,
areas do you cover in terms of face-to-face meetings? What locations do you cover? Because obviously on Zoom and calls, you can obviously do any location
yeah,
to
yeah.
help with that. But what about in person?
Well, we're based in the North Midlands, and our
Yeah.
title is the North Midlands LGBT Elder Peoples Group. So that's where our focus is. Obviously, when we are on Zoom, we can extend to do a much wider range, and that's fine. And I don't think anybody in the group has got any problems with that. And I don't think it's not against our constitution, because one of our constitution aims is to engage with wider community. But locally, we previously met at the American Clubhouse, which is part of the Brighter Futures program, but they closed it down for social gatherings because of the COVID restrictions. So we had to look elsewhere when it was safe to do so, and we went to Fenton Town Hall, which again is a refurbished, beautiful building in the cafe there, and they made us very welcome, and they still do. And so on the 3rd Monday of each month, we meet up in person. And
Amazing.
yeah, it's worked very well.
And how can we push that for you in terms of, we've obviously got clients and customers in our independent living scheme, supported housing, just in our communities as well, that, may not be openly comfortable to talk to us about this, but we could, potentially refer them through and
Yeah.
say, this is
Well,
where
we've
to go.
got
So how could we push it?
Yeah, well, we've got limited capacity. I mean, I do things like this because I think it's important.
Yeah.
But it is when it comes to individual level, we want to help people individually, and I'm trying to expand the number of volunteers we've got to enable that to take off. But at the present time, it is still possible to do that with by the website. That's
Yeah.
one thing.
Which we'll
Uh,
make sure to link to.
yeah, sure. And from the website, to sign up for the mailing list. And the mailing list is almost 200 now, which is it's not, well,
Fantastic.
for a local community organisation, local charity, it's not bad.
No, and you may encourage people to start these discussions themselves, even if they, are not in the location that you cover, they may be able to have a conversation with you in order to gain that confidence to maybe have their own little coffee morning. It could start from there.
Yep. The mailing list is open to all adults. So any adult. We don't make any discrimination at all about whoever wants to join the mailing list is welcome to do so, and anybody is welcome to come to our group who subscribes to the aims and objectives of the group. So,
Yeah.
and we also have a telephone, and we're working on that because we're going to upgrade it so that we have a proper um, contract.
Yeah.
And so we can do more things like WhatsApp group and Instagram and TikTok and things like that. And those the details of those are on the website, and also on every email that goes out. At the bottom of the email that goes out, there's the website, the email address, and the phone number.
Fantastic. I love your outlook on everything, the support that you give, the fact that you've had your own journey and you faced a lot of discrimination, but you've also come out the other end and just, even when you were being given an insult from these people driving past, you took it as actually that's quite a nice comment, which I love. You're turning everything round into a positive. So I guess for me, before we close, obviously, this chat, because me and you could talk for hours on this, and
Indeed.
I definitely don't want this to be the last time. We need to keep going. Um, but from myself as an EDI ally in orbit, what can we do more of? Not just in this subject, in everything in terms of EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion. What do you think needs to be seen more from an organisational point to give that support to help tackle isolation in, isolation in the social aspect, but also in the aspect of being comfortable to talk about who they are? What could we do more of?
Well, I think it comes down to in all your personal relationships,
Mhm.
you show respect and treat people for and accept them for who they are, not
Yeah,
make assumptions, and to make it clear that any subject is not taboo, that you
yeah,
are open to listen to anybody, whatever their concerns might be.
I love that. Okay, and one final one that's just popped
Mhm.
into my head as well that I'd like to ask. For everybody that's going to be watching this, what message would you like to leave today with to them? Because they obviously would have listened to all of your story, the journey you've been on, your encouragement to others, your support for others, your incredible life that and talents. I have to admit, I've never met so many, like I've never met a person with so many talents in one conversation. But what would you give them a final message of today?
I think be kind to yourself and be kind to other people. Yeah, I go with that. I go with that.
Lovely. I think that's my favorite saying ever. Just be kind. It costs nothing, and that's all we need. Love is love. Be
Yeah.
kind. It costs nothing, and just respect each other. And I think that's a beautiful way to end this
Absolutely.
conversation. You have been an absolute honour to speak with, and it's been invaluable hearing from you. I definitely want to keep in touch. I want to share all the things that you get up to, and this website that you've just talked about a second ago, I'd like to share the link. We can obviously let people know they can join
Yeah,
your mailing list, which would be fantastic.
yeah.
But I am going to keep you up to date with different things that we do to help encourage the story that you've told as well. And if we get any confidential emails
Yeah.
that they want to be passed directly to you, maybe
That's
to
fine.
have a conversation. I know we've already spoken about you'd be happy to do so, but yeah, thank you so much.
I might
And
not get a, I might not get a very prompt response.
do
But
not worry
I,
about that. We'll say we'll
yeah,
reply at some point.
yeah.
But yeah, it's you've just got the most amazing outlook on everything, and it's very, very inspiring. So I really appreciate your time
Oh, thank
today.
you. Thank you for that, Claire.